All right, we intend to continue our study of theology proper tonight. We mentioned last time the word theology is a big fancy word. It's just made up of two words. Theos means God. Ology means study of, so we're studying God. We also mentioned that everyone is a theologian. The only question is, are we good or bad at it? Because questions about God are the most important questions that man faces. And the first and the most important question is the question we're going to face first, which is, does God exist? We'll spend some time on that in a little bit. So we're studying God. Now, anytime we pick up the Bible, we're studying about God. We're going to be studying Him topically under these attributes now, instead of studying verse by verse and seeing what the verses have to say in a order fashion about it. We'll start out with some reasons. If we talk about God's existence, some reasons men deny God's existence. One is they can't see God. That's one of the big reasons, I think. They can't see Him, so He's not there. Well, I'm not surprised they can't see God. Number one, God is spirit. We can't see spirit, so I'm not surprised by that. John 4:24. So that doesn't shock me at all. Secondly, according to the Bible, if you could see God, it would kill you anyway in your present human existence. So it's best that we not see God. So that doesn't surprise me either. But the truth of the matter is, it is true no one has seen God. The Bible actually teaches no one has seen God at any time. 1 John chapter 4, verse 12. But we can see the effects of God. And that's the way we see God. Nobody's ever seen the wind, have they? We believe the wind exists. Why? We see the effects of the wind, and we know the wind, therefore, must exist. God produces love in our heart, and God is the source of that love, because according to 1 John chapter 4, verses 12 to 13, God is love. So we know based on that effect that God, the cause, must be behind it. Another thing, sometimes a professor will start to argue in a class somewhere, and he's very, they're very smart. They got their PhDs and all, and they'll start talking about, well, how could you believe in this God person you have never seen? Well, I believe in France. I've never seen it. Don't intend to see it either. Hitler saw it once. Didn't take him long to get through seeing it either, did he? But as they begin this discussion about the things that they believe in are only the things they can see, just ask that wonderful professor, what about his mind? He'll say, oh yeah, you can do a CAT scan to see my brain. I didn't ask about your brain. I asked about your mind. You put your brain out of your skull, lay it on the ground over there, and tell me if it thinks. Doesn't think anymore, does it? Brain's not the source of your thought. Tell me that your mind, prove to me that your mind exists. Well, when he talks, he thinks he proves it, but when he talks, usually he's proving that there's not a lot of brain in there. Because of what he's saying, because he's saying what? Psalm 14:1. There is no God. But that's just his foolish thoughts. So, we believe a lot of things we can't see. In fact, the soul, James 2:26. Never seen a soul, have you? But you want to know how you know you got a soul? You're alive. Want to know who don't have souls? People who aren't alive. Really that simple. Lose your soul, lose your life. The problem of evil is another reason some people deny God's existence. Now don't worry, I ain't going back there yet. Been there enough lately. So we'll just say that's one reason. Go on. Evolution is the reason a lot of people deny the existence of God. Mostly because they don't know a lot about evolution. They just know it's sort of out there. And people say that it proves there is no God. Dr. Derek Ager, who is the chair of the Department of Geology at the College of London, said this in a paper he wrote once. Almost all the evolutionary stories I learned as a student have now been debunked.
Yeah.
See, evolution, when they talk about evolution, they'll talk about the fact that it's ever changing and never able to come to knowledge of truth. It changes all the time. Why? Because new evidence comes out that debunks what they believed last week. They got to come up with something new. Mm-hmm. Not to get into a long list of them, just to throw one out there. In the 1920s, in Nebraska, they found a tooth. And they turned that tooth into a whole missing link man. A tooth became an entire missing link man. Have y'all ever seen one of these cavemen in one of these natural history museums? You ever notice how much hair they got on their body? You ever notice how much hair they got on their head? How do they know how much hair they got on their body on their head? How would you know that from bones? How much hair did Michael Jordan have on his hair? How would you know that from his bones? You wouldn't. Was he 16 or 65 when you took the picture of Michael Jordan, you know? You don't know from the bones. The bones don't tell you anything about hair. But they put the hair on there because that's part of the game. They want it to look more like an animal, so they put more hair on it. That's part of the game. So they can fool you. Suck you right on in. Oh, look at that. Oh, that looks scary. That looks like it's sort of half gorilla, half man. Well, let me tell you about this man, this tooth that was found in Nebraska in the 1920s. They called him Nebraska Man. I don't know why they call it Cornhusker, but they call it Nebraska Man. 5 years later, after the farmer said what I'm about to tell you was the case, 5 years after they found the tooth and turned it into a whole man, I mean, they made the whole, wax figure out of this tooth. They were looking around the area where the tooth was and found the rest of what went to the tooth, and it was a pig. But that's okay, because 3 years before, a pig farmer said, that's a pig's tooth. He said that because he looked at it and saw it was a pig's tooth. But they just knew it was something somewhere between man and some orangutan somewhere. Why? Because that's what they were looking for. If you look hard enough for something, you're going to find it. You say, oh no, that's not true. Y'all don't remember when you was dating? Okay, I dropped it there. Yup. What do they call them now? Red flags? Evolutionists don't see no red flags, do they? Anyway, I'll go on beyond that and to skip on over it. Well, I mean, a few things. When I talk about evolution, I don't mean there's no such thing as microevolution, meaning small changes within a species. I believe that people today are taller than they were 100 years ago. Better nutrition does that to you. But they're still people. Macroevolution turns animals into people. I don't believe in that. I do believe there are changes within kinds, is the Bible word. They like to use the word species. I prefer to use the word kinds. There are changes within kinds, but that doesn't mean that they create any new kinds. That's right. I believe that it's impossible to get matter from nothing. Evolution says, oh yeah, you got matter from nothing. First it was nothing, and matter disappeared.
Yes, something that nothing good can come from something bad.
They got nothing out, they got something out of nothing.
Yeah.
They believe they got mind from muck. They believe they get life from non-life, despite the law of biogenesis that says that's impossible. Which agrees with what the Bible says, incidentally. They believe they got a universe that they know from the laws of thermodynamics that is winding down. They got a universe that has never been wound up to start with. And they believe that even though they admit macroevolution is not happening now, they believe it happened in the past, but they say they only believe things based on evidence. So that's enough on evolution. Another reason, and this is the real reason for most of them, they find God to be a problem, not a solution. Psalm 14:1, Psalm 53:1 both say the same thing. The fool that said in his heart, there is no God. When you go on reading Psalm 14:1, he goes on to talk about how man has gone into sin. It's sin that has tainted man in such a way that he has tried to question the existence of God. See, they find God a problem, not a solution. This is a little book called The Problem of God. D. James Kennedy quotes a guy, y'all remember Murrell Griffin, right? Mm-hmm. He used to have a little talk show. And Murrell Griffin had a famous atheist from England named Julian Huxley on. And Julian Huxley said on his show, when Murrell asked why do people believe in evolution, Huxley said the reason we accepted Darwinism, even without proof, is because we didn't want God to interfere with our sexual mores. Oops, what did I just do? Wrong button. Lee Strobel, who wrote a book called The Case for Faith, he used to be a legal reporter at the Chicago Times, I believe. It might be Chicago Tribune, but I believe it's Chicago Times. Said, I was more than happy to latch on to Darwinism as an excuse to jettison the idea of God so I could unabashedly pursue my own agenda in life without moral constraints. This is the real reason many people deny God. It's not that they have thoroughly studied evolution and said, oh, it's got to be the truth. They just don't like that. God is what it implies. If God is your problem, then the only real solution you got to your problem is God. When it comes to God's existence, there's only a few choices. God is the best explanation why there is something instead of nothing at all. See, there's only three choices. Either matter is eternal, something came from nothing, or something came from God. That's it. That's all you got. Either matter is eternal, something came from nothing, or something came from God. Something came from nothing is a contradiction by itself. Because nothing can't make something because nothing was already nothing. But science today has given up on the idea of matter being eternal. That's why they turned to the Big Bang. So that's sort of out the window. Besides the fact that, again, with the laws of thermodynamics, if matter is eternal, why would it still be there? Think about this. If matter was always here in the infinite past, and let's just say, think about matter. Go down to the beach. What happens to matter? Erosion, right? Matter erodes. What happens to energy? Energy goes from high to low. Balls don't roll uphill. High to low. Energy's running out, matter's eroding. So if in infinity past, matter and energy were in existence, would they still be here today? No. They were already eroded and energied out. I don't care how long that rabbit beats that drum, eventually it quits beating, right? I know it's not while the commercial's still going on. They wait till the commercial goes off, but eventually the rabbit quits beating the drum, energy runs out. The question is, what's compatible with the God of the Bible? Is the universe as it exists, as we know it, compatible with the God of the Bible? The first cause of the universe must be uncaused. If this were not the case, then we have what we call infinite regress. I'll show you an illustration of that in a few minutes, about 3 slides from now. But the idea is, either the first cause of the universe was uncaused, or the universe caused itself. It can't cause itself. The first cause of the universe must be non-spatial. If this were not the case, then we have to accept the premise that space created itself, because space is part of that creation, right? We look up, we see space. Did space create itself? No, space was created, so it must be non-spatial. First cause of the universe must be atemporal, outside of time. If this were not the case, then time created itself. Again, a contradiction. The first cause of the universe must be immaterial. If this is not the case, then material things must have created themselves. The first cause of the universe must be personal. If this is not the case, then the only that is illogical to accept the premise that the universe is as old as itself. The first cause of the universe must be power. How could you have an effect coming out of a cause that's not greater than the effect? So the cause of the universe is uncaused, non-spatial, outside of time, immaterial, a personal force with incredible power. Who does that sound like to you? Here's the cosmological argument. This gets back to this infinite regress. Whatever comes into being must have a cause. The universe came into being, therefore the universe must have a cause. Again, if it's not eternal, it had to have a cause. So it had to have a cause, and what cause was it? Now I'm talking about the infinite regress there. You might come along and see some dominoes falling down. If you've ever seen one of them trying to set the record, looks like they've been falling down for a while, but guess what? Somebody set them up, and somebody knocked the first one over. If they didn't, they wouldn't be falling down. And there's wonderful design in those dominoes, if you've ever noticed when they try to set those records. The universe came into being, so it must have had a cause. But people object to the cosmological argument and say, oh, no. If you just contradict yourself because you're saying God must have a cause. If everything must have a cause, I caught you, John Stuart Mill says, then God must have a cause. I got you. Whatever comes into being must have a cause. Did I say everything must have a cause? No. You missed the first premise. It's whatever comes into existence. Meaning every effect must have a cause. We have to get back to an uncaused cause. And the question is the uncaused cause mind or matter? There has to be an uncaused cause. Which one can create, mind or matter? That's easy. Another objection, they say, well, we don't need to find the cause for the universe. David Hume said, it were better never to look beyond the present material world. In other words, we shouldn't even look for a cause of the universe. I guess it would be if you didn't believe in God. Bertrand Russell said the universe is just there, and that's all there is to say. See, every effect must have a cause. That's what's called analytical truth. That's just saying all bachelors are not married. All triangles have three sides. Every effect has a cause. But if God is not an effect, God doesn't need a cause. God is a cause. Another version of the cosmological argument. Everything that began to exist must have a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe must have a cause. No thing that came into existence can cause itself, therefore something outside the universe must have been its cause. God is the only thing outside the universe. God must have caused the universe, therefore the existence of the universe constitutes proof that God exists. That's the cosmological argument. Then you got the law of cause and effect. The cosmological argument is really based on the law of cause and effect. All effects must have cause or causes. That is really one of the most fundamental laws of science. And it's what scientific investigation is based on. If sick people just got spontaneously better, then there wouldn't be any need for any medicine. There wouldn't be any need for that science in that area. To deny that is a problem. Dr. Robert Jastrow was the founding director of NASA's Goddard Space Institute in 1961. Later became a professor of geophysics at Columbia University. He was the first chairman of NASA's exploration committee that turned into the Lunar Exploration Committee. And he said, the great saga of cosmic evolution, to whose truth the majority of scientists ascribe, is the product of an act of creation that took place 20 billion years ago, according to their estimates. Science, unlike the Bible, has no explanation for the occurrence of that extraordinary event. The universe and everything that has happened in it since the beginning of time are a grand effect without a known cause. An effect without a cause? That is not the world of science. It's a world of witchcraft, wild events, whims of demons, a medieval world science has tried to banish. As a scientist, what are we to make of this picture? I do not know. So they're stuck there. They have no choice. Without God, there is no cause. Next to what's called the teleological argument. That's a fancy word because teleos means perfection or design. We call it design argument usually. The universe or world or body or whatever you want to throw in that little first blank exhibits X, whether you want to throw in the second blank. Design of some kind. The nature of X, that design, would suggest design by an intelligent mind. Thus, the universe must be a product of intelligent design. For example, change it up a little bit. If you were if you made X a Ford Explorer, it looks like it's designed by somebody who knows what they're doing, right? It didn't just happen. A tornado didn't blow into a field of steel to make a Ford Explorer. Mm-hmm. You see design there. So, William Paley, philosopher in England, wrote a book called Natural Theology in 1802, and here's what he had to say. He said, if you're walking on a beach and happen upon a watch, after noting the intricacies of the design, you would instinctively realize the existence of a watch requires the existence of a watchmaker. Right? Mm-hmm. You wouldn't say, well, look here, what this ocean has made here. The sand and the ocean got together, and here's a watch they made. The waves just rolled in just right. No, somebody made the watch. And as he unpacked that argument a little bit, he noticed some signs. He said it has a spring that gives its motion, a series of wheels to transmit the motion. The wheels are made of brass so they don't rust. The spring is made of steel, and the front cover is of glass so you can see through it. Well, the world shows even greater design than evidence of that watch. It's greater art than a watch, more design than a watch, more variety than a watch, and adapted to ends greater than a watch. In fact, speaking of a watch, up until 1967, guess how we kept time in the United States? The first, let's get there, the Naval Observatory. The Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C. had a clock there. And we went by their clock. But guess how we knew their clock was right? They would adjust their clock from time to time. You know how they adjusted it? By looking at space into the heavens. In other words, the heavens were more precise than the most intricate clock we could come up with here on Earth, costing millions of dollars, that we set every clock in this country by. And they recognized that the heavens were more precise than that clock. I say till 1967, after that, they made an atomic clock. Mm-hmm. And the atomic clock is supposed to lose a second every about 133,000 years.
They still have to adjust it.
Yeah. And they figure they're going to have to adjust it a second after 133,000 years or so, and they're going to adjust it by the university. This hasn't got around to it yet. In other words, we got more precise, but they still recognize the universe is more precise. If the watch implies a watchmaker, the world implies a designer. My version of that is a little bit less complicated. If the universe, earth, human body bears the marks of design, they each have a designer. The universe, earth, and human body bear the marks of design, therefore the universe, earth, and human body have a designer. Let me prove that to you. If you walked up on those bushes, what would you say to yourself? Isn't it amazing they just grew that way? Nobody would say that. Well, why do we think the animals those bushes are based on just happened? You think about that? These didn't just happen. Which is more complicated, making an elephant or making a bush elephant? The design that went into the real elephant? It just happened, but that, no, I don't believe you. That didn't just happen. Who designed the least effective heart, and who designed the most effective heart? Here we have the Jarget 2000. Over here. You may have heard of the old Jarget 2000. It's a artificial heart. The record for someone having an artificial heart, not a heart transplant, but an artificial heart, in their chest is 1,513 days. Peter Houghton in England had it. He died November 25th, 2007. Not even to bring up Methuselah, modern man has been able to live with this one for 100 years. This one can't even make it 2,000 days. And how many people with how many smarts designed it? God. This is the design. You'd be laughed off of the planet if you said this one was designed. Which one of these was designed? There's your solar system. There's a solar system in there. That's the Milky Way. But you got to look real close. I couldn't find a good solar system picture. So you got to really look close and see the solar system inside the Milky Way, wherever it is. I can't find it myself. I'm not that good. But this one, everybody knows there's a designer there. What about this one? If you look at the details of our chemistry, molecular biology, you find a signature of a designer. And that designer will be a higher intelligence than elsewhere in the universe. You see this Richard Dawkins quote? Mm-hmm. If you look at the details of our chemistry and biology, you find the signature of a designer, and that designer could well be higher intelligence than elsewhere in the universe. What he's saying is, he's not talking about God because he's Richard Dawkins. He's talking about space aliens. Because he'd rather have space aliens who he has not seen than a God he's too blind to see. Even though he has to admit we have design. Here's the historical case for God. We'll have time to get to the verse, but 1 Corinthians 8, 5 through 7 talks about even there are gods many and lords many, there's only one God. The point is, every society out there worships something. Always has. Virtually all human civilizations throughout history look for God. Why? Religion is every culture, every race, nature. Without God, there's marriage doesn't have dignity, the family doesn't have authority, education doesn't have its highest appeal. Why are there more than 200 flood stories? You see 200 of them listed there on Wikipedia. Over here they did a survey of these 200 plus stories. And it turns out, you've heard about the flood stories, right? All these nations, all these different ethnic groups have a flood story. Now, I'm not an anthropologist, but anthropologists tell me that usually a myth is a faded memory of an actual historical event. And the more time that passes, the less accurate the myth may be, but there's something usually behind it. All over the world, they have flood stories. 95% of that flood, it was low 95% of the time. It was a favorite family 88% of the time, out of 200. Survival on the boat 70% of the time. Animals were saved 67% of the time. Flood refuted the weakness of man 66% of the time. And even 9% of them, there were 8 people saved. Now you say, that's not very many, 8%. More than one's pretty good. What's the chances out of how many people could have been saved? 1 person, 2 person, 3 person, 3, all the way to 10 million people. What are the chances 8 would have been saved and approaching 10%? Not much. I think that's pretty good. Just random? I don't think so. In other words, as you read the table of nations, as Shem, Ham, and Japheth branch out after the flood, they take this original true story with them, And those cultures who did not write it down in an inspired record passed it along, and the story changed over time, but the grain of truth behind it is right here. There was a God, and there is a God. As St. Augustine said, there's a God-shaped vacuum that every man that knows Christ can fill. All right, we'll come back and look at this in more argument next time. We're almost through with this section about God exists. First thing we need to know about God is that God exists. The second thing we want to learn about God is that He is, the word that I want to use, He is knowable, but He is beyond comprehensible. The third thing I want to look at, we're going to look at the fact He is immutable. That's what I've been doing this week, is immutability. I've been loving it. All right, so we will continue on with this next time. And any questions before we close? Good. All right, thanks.
Thank you.